Build in public in vivo update number 3. Let's have a look into what I have been able to achieve in the last week. Let's first have a look into the most important thing, the app itself. So what I added is actually the whole concept around the categories and its products. So as you can see now on the shopping list, at first you will see your shopping list where you can also add another shopping list. But then I added a toggle menu here where you can also see the categories. And then for the categories, what you can see is there are global categories, and then you can also add your own. So the global categories, those are managed by the CMS, in my case, strapi. And the idea here is that I can basically add some categories and its products, which you would usually always use. So when you start, you are not starting from scratch, but then you have already everything you need to use the app. It should be valuable right from the start. But the goal is that you can really customize everything in the way that you need it for your specific scenarios. Let's add another category. I don't know, shoes. So we added this category now. And as you can see, I added this pattern where you always have like a headline. So you are in the category shoes. And then category is more or less the backlink, which leads you back. And then here you see your category, which is not a global one. And then you would also have the name of the category with an edit icon. And this is the one way you would edit. I'm not so sure if that's a genius pattern, but I use it around the app. So let's see. Right now I kind of like it. So what you can do now with your custom categories, you can add products. And then for this product, you can also obviously edit it and delete it. And then also for the global categories, you can also add some custom fruit. And here you would also see that it is not a global product. For the global ones, those are products that you cannot edit or delete. So those will be common for any user, so to say. So this is the main part of what I've done last week. So if you now go into the supermarket, I forgot the name. Let's see. So we have this category shoes and there's some test product in it. And now if we go to the supermarket, let's say, okay, some custom fruit, that's the one that I just added. So as you see, it's already indexed as well. So whenever you create or update something, the index in Meliset is updated as well. If I select it, it goes to fruits. I want to add 22 of those. And then you have your custom product here as well. And then what I also did, but I think that we also covered last week, is all the stuff around the stores. So you can select the store and then you would see, for example, different spaces. So the one on top is more or less the categories that are available in the store. And then there's a section where you don't have any items left to purchase. So they are basically all just checked. And then there is another section. These categories are not active for the selected store. So whenever you have your store settings, you can activate those. But as before, you always all see all the stuff in the list. So it's not hidden. So the list is always complete. Yeah, so that's what has been done mostly in the last week. So everything around the categories. Yes, so there are now the global categories and the personal ones. The global ones as well as the personal ones are maintained in strapi. And then in strapi, the differentiation mostly is that if you have like a custom product or also a custom category, what you will see is that there is a household ID attached to it. So the global ones would just not have a household ID added to it. Yeah, and then there was quite some rework done as well, but then also, categories and products, all the CRUD stuff, adding it, but also deleting, and then also making sure that the index is being updated. For example, when you rename a category, then for all the products in the index, the category name also has to be updated. So there was quite some work around all of that. So the metrics, so they are still not really metrics. The goal is kind of still the same. I haven't invited anyone yet because we are not live yet, but I was thinking a bit about the monetization. So the thing about the monetization is that at some point, obviously, I want to try to charge some money for this. The thinking that I'm currently in right now is there are some models that I could do. So obviously there is the famous monthly subscription. There is a yearly fee, so to say, freemium model I could do. And then a one-time pay, which would be like a purchase. So the thing is, the monthly subscription, something like €5 per month, I would definitely say there's not enough value. I think it's very unlikely that you would be willing to pay €5 per month or dollars for just the shopping list, because there are shopping lists that are for free, and then also a subscription for that might be not the right model in this case. So maybe at some point when there's a lot more features, and then there are also features that justify a monthly subscription, like storage or something, maybe it could be something that we could do at some point. But I think right now, this is not an option that makes sense. So a yearly fee, so let's say you pay €20 paid yearly, which kinda is also a subscription, but maybe it would be a different, like from the psychology perspective, it might be a bit different, that it feels a bit more like a one-time payment. So you would pay €20 and then you can access it. And then this is a yearly subscription. So I think it's a bit the same. I think there is not enough value for that yet. Freemium, so basically offering the list for free and then get some money from something else. I don't have any upsales capabilities because I just have one feature set. So I would say, I mean, what you could do is something like you can only have one shopping list and not multiple ones or something. But yeah, I think also freemium, I mean, what would be then the model that you would you charge for afterwards? I mean, it still holds true that the monthly subscription would not be feasible. So that leaves us with the one-time payment. And that's, I guess, something that I will try out. And that would be something like, I don't know, maybe €20 one-time payment. And then at the beginning you would give some offering where you would basically just lower the price to, I don't know, something like $5.99 or something. And then with that, you would basically pay for the permanent use of the purchase and shopping features. So basically the shopping list and stuff, but then you would just pay it once and then you can use it forever. So I think that's the one that I might use. It's still hard to tell if the value that's provided make people really pay for it, but at least I can definitely try it. One thing that I have in my mind is that it might be at least an assumption that people might be willing to pay for the app itself, but also to follow the journey of building public more closely. So it might be not that someone who would be willing to pay for that is willing to pay for the app itself, but then maybe also package within the built in public story, so to say. It might be a bit convincing because let's say you would be following the built in public story, so to say, and then you will also be using the app. You might be also inclined to basically see that as a value added. So that's the current theory. So I think what I will do is I will definitely limit it to just a few active test users, because honestly, I think I don't need that many test users, because it's, going shopping, that's something that I'm pretty much aware of, also my wife. And then if I add like maybe maximum 10, maybe even less, just to test and see, get some initial feedback, and then especially also testing the apps for bugs and stuff, that might be enough. And then I could directly put a paywall here and see what happens. And I think, at the beginning, it might make sense to go with a very low price. And then if something like more features are added or I see the values there, then the price can also be easily increased. And then one thing that I will definitely need to communicate is that this would be more or less just for this one module, so to say, because then I would be able to add more modules, so to say, like, I don't know, handling tasks and to-dos within the household scope. There would be maybe another module that you would also maybe have a one-time payment for. So that's the current thinking about the monetization. But first, there are some other things that are very important that need to be done. And that's the things that come next. So what's still not done is the inviting household members that I definitely need for the app. And then the shopping mode. So when you're shopping, the screen should stay active. Also, since it's a web app, it's not a native app for the app stores. I still want to make sure that you can add the app to your home screen. And then you have like some kind of a logo. So that's something I want to do. Offline capabilities won't be there yet. So you would need to have internet access. That's definitely something that I will do in the future. I will definitely need to test, and I would also need to deploy to production. So yeah, depending on the time I have, which right now unfortunately is pretty limited, maybe I can pull that up off for next week. Let's see. But I guess it's also safe to say could be next week or the week after. If I can get that done in October, that would be cool. Okay, so that's the update more or less on the non-technical side. In the next step, I will go over to some implementation details. So what we will look into today, so as I mentioned, what I have here is strapi, and strapi maintains the categories and the products. And the reason for that is I want to have it in 2 languages, so it needs to be translatable. That's a feature that strapi already has. And I want to manage the categories and product in a CMS because especially the global ones are used for everyone. And this way I can simply extend them in the CMS. But then also the private ones, they are also stored in the content management system. So in strapi, because I don't want to have, some categories here and some other categories maybe directly in the database of the app itself. So all products and categories are maintained within strapi. So now when I use the database of the app itself, I'm using Prisma. And with Prisma, I have a schema, which also transfers to TypeScript. But I also have the same for strapi. If you look, for example, into in lib, I have a strapi file. And then the strapi file contains everything, for example, updating products, creating and all that stuff. So for example, if I update the product, I would do a fetch. As you can see, this, like the database functions, also the connections, the functions for strapi, they don't do any validation. They don't do any restrictions on the authorization level. So that has to be done before. So that's something that I do in the actions. And then once you pass it to these functions, which obviously are server-only functions, they are not handling those stuff. So they just expect you to do that before. And then, for example, if I update the product, what you can see is I use a strapi fetch. So that's more or less a wrapper around fetch. And I can here define the schema of the response. As you can see, the response is typed by the schema which I get from strapi. And those schemas, obviously, I don't create myself. But if you see this one, there is a generated strapi type file. And this comes from strapi, from the open API definitions in strapi. So this is pretty nice because in the code now I can use the schema from strapi directly. And then whenever I use update product, let's see if I find it. So in the product actions, for example, here, okay, so that's maybe not the best idea. Get product. Yeah, here, for example, I get the product, and then when I return it, I have the schema. It's also typed here. So I do have all my typings for the product here as well. As you can see, here's all the good stuff. And I don't need to do anything for that. So the only thing that I need to do to get that done is in the CMS, so in Strapi, you need to install a certain package, which is the plugin documentation. So this plugin documentation, what it does is in source, extensions, documents, it generates the full documentation JSON, and this is an OpenAPI specification. As you can see, here's all the OpenAPI specifications. And then in the app itself, what you can do is you can use a package called OpenAPI TypeScript, and then you would just use OpenAPI TypeScript and basically put the path to the file here. So since this is just one repo, the file folder structure will be there wherever you would clone the repo. And then you pass the full documentation JSON, and then you can output it into your Strapi DTS. So this way you would generate the types automatically. And this is pretty nice. I also made a video once where I use this and then also OpenAPI fetch. So basically you would then have a fetch client where you can pass the type definition and you get some extra typings. Actually, I'm not using that anymore because at some level I had a problem where there was significant delays in the requests, and I don't know exactly why that was, but what I think the reason was when you have a very, very large TypeScript definition file, somehow things go a bit wonky. So I'm not using this anymore. So instead what I do, I basically do my own Strapi fetch wrapper. And what this wrapper does is just getting the URL of the API from the environment. And then also I'm guarding every request to the Strapi with a token. So in Strapi, you can create a token to access the API. And then I use this token basically. So this is basically the authentication for to access the Strapi API. That's I'm handling in a custom Strapi fetch. And then I also added another level, which is the next fetch. That's then the actual wrapper around fetch itself. So this allows me to use QS, for example. So I just add the query string there, and whenever I pass a query to this wrapper function, it uses QS to stringify the query. So that's especially nice when you're working with Strapi. You do a lot of filters, pagination, all that stuff via query parameters. And so what I can do now is I can just, when I use next fetch, or in this case Strapi fetch, I can pass the query parameters just as a plain object. So when I pass the query locale to Strapi fetch, it just passes it down to the next fetch wrapper, and then it uses QS to create the query string. And then I can also do some other stuff here. So for example, one thing that I ran into is that Strapi, when you delete something, it doesn't return an application JSON, but just a response status. So I cannot just always do a response.json. So that would fail in case the content type is not application JSON. So those kind of things you can also do here in that scenario. And then what is also important, or the reason why I use not next fetch directly within Strapi is, as I said, because of the authentication stuff, but then also whenever you would add another backend service, for example, an e-commerce service or whatever you want, you would then create another fetch wrapper for that other service. So that's why I'm not doing those authentication stuff directly within this next fetch wrapper. So that's something that I wanted to showcase, which I use and find quite useful in this video. If you have questions for that, let me know. And that's it for the update. So let's see how close we come to the release of the first test version in the next week. So there's quite a little bit to do. So the most of the basic functionality is there now. But setting everything up live and then also testing and debugging stuff, that will definitely be also some time. but we are getting close. So see you in the next week.